Nick Buckley, welcome back to the show. I'm in Dallas. Last time I was in the south of London, so it wasn't because of you. I've travelled 10,000 kilometres, but obviously it still works. How have you been?
I've been good, thank you. I've actually been to Dallas. I've actually stood on the grassy knoll.
Ah, yes, of course. I suppose I should go and have a look at that. The grassy knoll, from which apparently all of the conspiracy theories emanated, or many of them
Yeah.
anyway, when Lee Harvey Oswald allegedly killed John F. Kennedy. Very interesting, yes, very interesting. Well, I haven't really seen much of it as it was dark when I arrived, and it's dark now. But I shall go and have a look. And it'll be dark on Monday during the eclipse. That's why I'm here, actually, as well. But you can shed some light for us. Tell us again about your electoral ambitions in Manchester.
Yep. So it's more than Manchester. It's Greater Manchester. So if you just say Manchester, you upset a couple of million people. Um, yeah. So I'm standing for Mayor of Greater Manchester because I'm tired of the way my region and my country's going. It's been declining for decades and decades. We can't just blame one person or one political party. After the Second World War, we seem to go into managed decline, and that's all our political leaders give us now is managed decline. And I want better than that. I want more than that. And running alongside that is also the this new aim of removing our freedoms, of removing our personal choice, of removing our personal responsibility, where the state always wants to jump in and tell you what you can do, what you can't do, what you should do, how you raise your children, how you should, what transport you can use. And it's like, I'm tired of being told what to do. Just leave me alone and let me live my life unless I break the law. And if I break the law, you need to hammer me. And that's sort of the message I'm giving to the people of Greater Manchester.
I've stood in many elections. I don't really do that now, but what I've noticed in the 40 years I've been active in politics is, in my view, a certain dumbing down, where despite the fact we've never had more access to information, we seem to never have had less interest in reading it. I wonder if the secret of success for career politicians is the fact that we don't hold them to account. We don't really pay attention to what they're doing. What's your view?
Oh, I completely agree. And I thought part of the reason is, even though we complain about our lives in the UK, they've never been better. Even the poorest person in the UK today is probably better off than the richest person was 50 years ago. So there's nothing really to complain about. So all we do is we moan about tiny things. And when it comes to voting and looking into candidates, looking into papers, the answer to most people now is can't be bothered because I'm okay, my life's doing okay. And that is the apathy that is setting across. I think it's the Western world actually.
You're not apathetic. Clearly, you're running this campaign against, I suppose, Andy Burnham. He's restanding the sitting mayor. Is that right?
Yeah, yeah, and he is a formidable politician. He's probably the most popular Labour politician in the country. His face is never off the TV. He talks about national issues, international issues, and he's basically a prime minister in waiting. So he's going to be extremely difficult to beat.
It sounds to me like you're his campaign manager.
I I think he's done lots of things wrong, but I'm a realist. What I don't want to do is tell people he's evil, he doesn't know what he's doing, he's a stupid man, because none of those things are true. So if I'm going to change this country, I need to start with myself. And and what I need to do is treat the voter and people of this country as adults, as sensible adults. So I tell them the truth and I don't try to pull wool over their eyes.
So we'll talk in the second part of the show, talk about what you really want to do. And I want to talk about cycle lanes in particular. It's a particular concern of mine that we're robbing the tax-paying road user of road space and giving it to the non-tax-paying cyclist. But we'll come back to that. In terms of your own campaign, though, where in the election period, I suppose now,
Mm.
what differentiates your candidature from the alternatives?
I think it has to be one thing, and it's the fact I'm not a career politician. I'm not a politician. I've spent all my life working, but those jobs I've been doing have been a training course for what I want to do now. So I've spent most of my working adult life in the public sector and in the charity sector. I've spent my career fixing social problems across Greater Manchester, reducing crime, getting people into work, getting rough sleepers off the streets, stopping children being raped, pulling young men out of criminal gangs. I've got the first, I've got the experience of the problems we're suffering now. So I think I'm the person with the answers. And most of those problems I've just discussed there, I've got plans waiting to go. I've got the experience. I know exactly what I'm going to do. I don't need to speak to other experts about how do we reduce crime. I am an expert. I've advised 3 prime ministers on this. I know what I'm going to do from day one. I know what can be done, what can't be done. I know what the barriers are, and I'm just ready to go.
So we'll talk about, as I say, transport policy in particular in the next part of the show. In terms of your competition, you've got Andy Burnham, who's a sitting member of Parliament. Who else are you considering a potential source of votes for you? Would they come from the Conservatives, for example?
Yeah, so the Tories won't win, haven't got a chance of winning. They'll be lucky if they come second. Every time we've had a mayor election, they always come a very poor second. They probably won't even come second this time because nationally they're ruined. No one wants to be voting for Tories. So I'm looking at Tory votes. Reform UK is standing. I'm looking for the same votes they'll be going for as well. The candidate for Reform UK was the Tory candidate for mayor 2 weeks ago, but he's
Two
just
weeks ago.
defected 2 weeks
2 weeks
ago.
ago.
So he's defected. So his reputation's a little bit tarred there, as in, what were you, 2 weeks ago you were singing Tory praises, now you're a Reform candidate. The Green Party will do slightly better than other elections because Labour have just U-turned on their Green pledge. And the
Yes, I
Lib
noticed that.
Dems, yeah,
28 billion
28 billion a year.
up
Oh,
in
we're not going to
smoke.
spend that anymore now. And the Lib Dems will do better than last time as well because they'll take some Tory votes and they'll take some Labour votes. So it's all up in the air at the moment. I was thinking George Galloway's party might put someone forward, in which case he'd have took 100,000 Muslim votes off Andy Burnham, but he's not put anyone forward. So it looks like Andy Burnham's still a favourite. The dark horses really will be myself and Reform UK. We don't know how they're going to do or I'm going to do. The other parties really haven't got a chance of winning.
Let's come back to what you're going to say about transport in a short while. And I declare an interest. I think that this country is absolutely shocking in terms of its, well, how shall I describe it? Ideologically driven rather than logically driven interest in cycling. But for now, we have a man who's shining a light on democracy in the north of England, in Manchester, Nick Buckley, MBE. And I want to talk with you, Nick, about your views on cycle lanes and transport generally. There are those, including me, who share the opinion that a war has been declared on the motorist. Where do you stand on that?
Oh, absolutely. And this war was declared, what, 2, 3 decades ago? It's a constant attack. It's high insurance premiums. It's the tax on diesel and petrol. It's, ULEZ, it's clean air zones, it's low traffic neighborhoods. It's taxing bigger cars more than little cars. It's demonizing drivers. It just never, ever stops.
And is that because, as a driver, they've got you over a barrel? If you have to make a particular journey, you're going to make the journey, even if it's expensive. Or is there some other reason? Why are they picking on drivers?
I think several reasons. The first reason is that every car has a registration plate. So the authorities know who is driving that car, or at least who owns that car. And it's easy to then rob more taxes out of that person because we've got your car registration. So they're an easy target because of that. But the main reason is lots of politicians I think have bought into this eco-green agenda where the planet's dying, humanity is a disease, we're causing climate change. Global boiling was something that came out last year. And because they haven't got answers to any of our serious problems, such as poverty, such as homelessness, such as kids stabbing each other to death, they then decide, well, this nebulous of a problem called climate change that no one can prove exists and no one can prove is man-made and we can never fix, that's a problem that I could pretend to do something about with no expectation of curing it, of ending it, of improving it, but at least I look like I care about humanity and saving the planet. It's just a distraction technique for failing politicians.
The inference from what you say is that you don't think that there's a climate emergency caused by humans.
Absolutely. I mean, so let me get this straight before I'm accused of being a lunatic. Of course, the climate is changing. The climate has changed every day of my life and every day the planet's existed. The climate is always changing. I believe all this change is natural cycles of the planet. This has got nothing to do with the activities of man. We're not that important on this planet. To think we could change the planet, the ecosystem, anything like that whatsoever.
There are those who would argue that human beings are wrecking the climate. Little Greta Thunberg up there in Sweden, for example, who famously said to the United Nations, "How dare you?" Anthony Gutierrez, you rightly pointed out, he said we have entered the era of global boiling. Why, if you're right about this, and we'll come to the transport thing in a minute, I'm interested in what you said about climate for now. Why, if you're right, do so many people think you're wrong?
Because it's turned into a religion. People need to believe in something, and we don't believe in the West now. We don't believe in religion anymore now. Christianity is dying. So, as a tribal creature, we follow the tribal leader. And because the tribal leader in ancient times wasn't big enough and powerful enough, we started creating gods. And this ideology has become a god. It's become a way of showing people you're a good person. I'm so good. I want to save the world. That's better than Jesus. Jesus just wanted to save humanity. I want to save the world.
um, One of the things that really surprises me is how few people realize that carbon dioxide represents 0.04% of the atmosphere. It's a trace gas. I asked some clever people yesterday here in Dallas what percentage of the atmosphere was CO2, and they guessed 38%. It may have been 95% 3-4 billion years ago, but it's not now. Yeah,
And people don't understand that CO2 is actually basically plant food. If it wasn't for CO2, there'd be no plants on Earth. The fact CO2 has increased, which it has, but the fact it's increased a tiny, tiny bit, means the planet's becoming greener. We have deserts now that are becoming greener because there's more CO2 in the atmosphere. This isn't necessarily a bad thing.
I think CO2 is our friend. I have to say that my worry is if you get to something called 150 parts per million, we've got 420 parts per million. If you get to 150, plants suffocate. They don't have enough CO2. They breathe CO2 like we breathe oxygen. And if it goes below that level, then we've got a problem because we've got nothing to eat. That can't happen anytime soon. But it does befuddle me where otherwise intelligent, sane people believe that there's some climate crisis. We just can't get away from it at the moment. But rant over. But we'll have you on for that subject as well. But let's turn to this question of cycling. And that's what I found very interesting when we were talking the other day. Where do you stand on all these cycle lanes?
First of all, can I just make a statement to stop the cyclists attacking me online? Because that's what I got after I was on your show last time. So let me state clearly, I'm not an anti-cyclist. I think people should cycle. I think people should buy bikes and cycle. I think it's a great way of you moving around. I think it's a great hobby. It's great entertainment. It's great for children. It's a great way of getting out and about, especially in our beautiful countryside in the UK. I'm not an anti-cyclist. My point is cycling is not a sensible transport means in the UK. I don't mind if you like hopping. I like children to hop outside on the street, but hopping isn't a transport system for the UK. So I'm not anti-hopping, I'm not anti-cycling. So I've put that out there now. Cycle lanes, again, has become a virtue signalling for councils. look at the cycle lanes we're producing now in Greater Manchester. Nobody uses them, but we don't care because we're a wonderful green council who wants to save the planet. Um, I said this before, Manchester's a rainy city. I think we get 30, 40, 60 days a year where it doesn't rain. Cycling isn't an option for a sensible person in Greater Manchester for travelling. You can't go shopping, you can't drop your kids off, you can't get to work. It just isn't the option. But we should cycle, that's fine. Go to the shops, get a loaf of bread, cycle there. Fantastic. I have not got an issue with that. But this over obsession on cycle lanes when our road infrastructure is collapsing. If you look, you can judge the success of a country by the state of its roads. And if you come to Greater Manchester, we're beginning to look like a third world country. Potholes everywhere. Our roads are collapsing. Our infrastructure is collapsing. But yet we're spending hundreds of millions of pounds on building cycle lanes. It doesn't make any sense to me.
Is it literally hundreds of millions of pounds in Manchester?
I would imagine so. Absolutely.
When you say people aren't using them, give us an idea. You may not have the statistics, but give us an idea of what you see when you're watching the cycle lanes in Manchester.
So we've got a huge one in Manchester city centre on Deansgate. Deansgate's probably the biggest road in the city centre of Manchester. And last year, about a year ago, about 12 months ago, they blocked half the road off, so it's one way now. But instead of I mean, one-way system's fine in city centres because you need to move traffic around. I've not got a problem with one-way systems, but instead of using both lanes now one way, they blocked one lane off and turned it into a cycle lane. And you can stand there in the middle of the day in Manchester city centre on a dry day. I've got a video on my YouTube channel on this. No cyclists. Pedestrians are walking in the cycle lanes because it's city centre is a busy place. It's turned into another pavement. If they wanted to reduce that road, what they should have done was increase the pavement size, and all the bars and restaurants on that road could have put tables and chairs out. That would have been a useful way of businesses raising more money for people using the city centre better, and it being a beautiful place. Instead now it's got cones and it's not used, and people don't use it. That's a city centre. And then we've got some trunk roads going out of the city centre. Chester Road is one. It goes from the city centre through Trafford. Trafford Council 4 years ago during COVID coned off half the dual carriageway. It's a trunk road going into a major city centre. 4 years later, the cones are still there. It's standing traffic during rush hour. I spoke to a lady who lives on a housing estate just off the road, and she's only got one way in and one way out of her estate, and it's Chester Road. And she says peak times you cannot even get out of her estate because there's bumper to bumper traffic when half the road is empty. And you may get, on rush hour, you may get 3 or 4 cyclists an hour in rush hour. But during the day, I've stood there for 40 minutes. You don't see anybody. I drive through it, and it's infuriating when you see all these roads we've paid for with our taxes and cars are not allowed on them. Crazy.
Now, the government and the pro-cycle lobby would say, oh, yes, but it's habit changing. It'll take time. But if we were all on bicycles, we'd be healthier. Never mind the fact that it seems to be a link between prostate cancer and cycling. But they say, oh, we'd be healthier and it would be greener and it'd be quieter and the quality of life would go up. How do you respond to that?
Well, let's say that's true. Let's say all that is true. My answer would be, how dare you tell me how to live my life? Who are you to tell me what I should and shouldn't do if I'm not breaking the law, obviously? Who are you to tell me what form of transport I should take? Who are you to tell me that my life isn't as good as someone else's life? My health might be damaged by doing... Who are you to tell me these things? I'm a free Englishman living in England. I don't need the government and the elite to dictate to me how to live my life. I need you to leave me alone and do the basics, governing the country and governing my area, but everything else, leave the people alone to make decisions they want to make. Now, of course, you can offer advice, and I don't mind governments and councils offering advice because sometimes they may know more than the people listening to experts or or doctors or whatever. They may be wrong as well most of the time, but I don't mind listening to advice. But give me the advice, then shut up and leave me to live my life the way I want to live my life.
The response to that would be, and playing devil's advocate here, regular viewers know that I'm very deeply skeptical about the woke cycling agenda. That's what I think it is. But the devil's advocate position would be this. If I want my children to cycle, I'm much more likely to get them to cycle if they can be separate from the other traffic. And then when they have children, it'll be part of their modus operandi. It'll just be how they get around, as they do in Amsterdam, for example.
No, absolutely. And my answer would be A, we're not Dutch. So stop trying to turn me into a Dutch person by saying I must cycle. And I'm tired of this. I'm tired of the government agenda being nudge, 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 nudging us to do things we don't want to do. Now, if you peel back this, what's really underneath this is state control. Now, what the private automobile did to the working classes in, let's say, the 60s, when some working class could afford to buy a car themselves, was it gave them extra freedoms. It gave them freedom to travel. It gave them freedom to visit places that the state didn't take transport to. It gave them freedom to find better jobs outside of their neighbourhood so they could travel further to get better paid jobs. It gave English working class the freedom to be free, not relying on the state to provide services for them. Now, with that freedom came a new way of thinking that the elite, you're not that important anymore now. You're not the experts I thought you were. You're not the perfection you keep telling me you are. And the elite, the governing class, don't like that. They want to be able to control us. They want, and I don't mean this in the James Bond stroking my cat, ha ha ha, I will control. I mean more in the terms of, if we only could run your lives for you, things would be much better in this country. It's that thought, it's that way of thinking that they want to control us, not to necessarily do bad things to us, but they think we're stupid. They think we're the deplorables. They think we're idiots. If we could only control you in your life, you would have a better life in the UK. And it's that arrogance I want to destroy. It's that arrogance that's why I want to remove them from power. The people may make poor choices. The people may make mistakes, but that's fine, because if you make a mistake, you're in a position then to correct that mistake. But when we have governments and politicians constantly making mistakes and making poor choices for us, there's nothing we can do about that. The power needs to be in the hands of the individual in this country, not to be given to the elite, to politicians, to parties, to governments. Always should be in the hands of free English people.
I've been an idealist for much of my life, Nick, and I tend to think, why can't those people be more generous to those people? Why do these people want territory and power in the first place? It's that power's never really given me a bang, to be honest with you. But I put it to you that you're in the minority here, because what we now have in this country is a political class of individuals who want to be politicians more than they want to do a particular thing. And I think that's what did for Boris Johnson. I think that's what's done for a lot of Nick Clegg, a lot of these people, because they don't actually have a message. They just have a mission, and the mission is them. I'm not sure what you think.
Oh, absolutely. The problem with our political system is career politicians. It's people like Andy Burnham, leaves university, starts working for an MP, then sits on some sort of committee, then gets a safe seat, and he's never had a proper job. Most of the people in Parliament have never had a proper job. That's become their career. And when you think about it, well, what is a career? When you've got a job, when you're stacking shelves at Tesco's, what do you want? Well, you'd like to be a supervisor. You'd like to be a middle manager. You're always looking for the next job up. What we're lacking in this country are statespeople, statesmen, stateswomen. People who say, I'm going to do public service because I want to improve my neighbourhood, my city, my country. And I don't care if what I say and do ruins my career, because I don't want a career. I just want to leave this country slightly better than when I found it. We don't have those people anymore now. It's all about climbing that greasy pole And when they've got a choice between an excellent policy that's going to improve the lives of the people of this country, but you're going to be unpopular and you'll probably lose your seat over it, but in 30 years' time, you'll be hailed a hero for putting this in place because it's improved the country 20 years from now, or doing nothing and you're guaranteed to win your seat again. We all know what career politicians will opt for. I'd like to think if I'm in that position, again, who knows, power corrupts, but I'd like to think if I'm in that position, I would sacrifice my career for the country to be better 20 years from now. And that's what we need. And I call people like that patriots.
Nick, I actually do have a bicycle. I've got an electric bicycle, and I quite enjoy it. It does the job when it's dry and it's warm, and I'll go half a mile on it. I won't go 10 miles, so I'm not against cycling either. I think my concern is this compulsion. But it seems to me, Nick, that this is all to do with 15-minute cities. The idea that you should have everything within 15 minutes of where you live. Apart from, of course, if you're one of the people setting the rules, then you can have a private jet.
Sounds great until you look into it. Who doesn't want local amenities on your doorstep that you can walk to? Of course you do. But what does that mean? Well, that means all those amenities on your doorstep will cost you more because they're not now in a mega supermarket 4 miles away. They're now a couple of minute walk away from your house in a small shop with larger overheads, less customers. So you'll pay for things a lot more. It we seem to be becoming a very stupid people where we believe in all these utopian ideas. A lot of it comes out of socialism as well. That, everything can be pink and fluffy and we can hug each other and there's no bad people in the world and there'd be no poor people if it wasn't for rich people. And these are just simplistic answers to extremely complicated problems. And we are becoming more stupid believing in silver bullet solutions to complicated problems.
I'm not against idealism, though, Nick. I sometimes think that it's the absence of true idealism that's driven us down to the path of, well, religions like the climate emergency, because people want to believe in something. So they demonize CO2 and deify cycle lanes, for example, and canonize cyclists. Is it because we live in a rather lazy time? I don't want to put words in your mouth, but it does seem to me that something's gone wrong.
Many things have gone wrong. We could spend 5 hours discussing why we're in the mess we're in the UK, and we still want to get to the bottom of it. We all should be idealists, as in we should all want our family, our lives, our country to get better. And do you know what? That's been the history of mankind for the last 100,000 years. Everything's always got better. Slowly 1,000 years ago, but a lot quicker now. Things are getting better all the time. What I'm tired of are these simplistic people who say the solution to our problems today is to tear everything down, tear down capitalism, tear down nation states, tear down, because that's the real problem. Well, no, no, no. They're the things that have given us everything we've got today. Things can be improved. Of course, they can be improved. We can be improved individually. I'm not the man I should be. I'm not as clever as I should be. I know that. And I'm working towards that. And I'll never reach the end of that. But to think we should tear everything down and start again by someone who's never achieved anything in their life, who's a first year university student, or someone who's never held a job, or someone who's an expert in one field, and they think they understand every other field because of an expert in one field out of a million fields. Those people are dangerous.
When you say dangerous, though, uh, it's an emotive word. What do you mean?
Dangerous in both ways. Dangerous as in their simplicity is damaging other people's lives because they're influencing them thinking there's easy solutions to complicated issues. So those people then don't work on fixing their issues or fixing their neighbour because they think this one quick solution will fix everything. So they're damaging and dangerous to them, but they're also damaging physically to all our lives because if they get their way and we tear down capitalism, there'll be mass starvation in the world. If they get their way and we tear down the nation state and borders, we'll be invaded. There'll be violence on the streets. So I'm in danger in both ways there.
Uh, we were talking about the politics of fear earlier on in the show. It sounds to me, though, that you're presenting a spectre. You're setting up a danger that you want to defeat. Is that fair? That's not criticism. Is it a fair observation?
A little bit. My campaign's not run on fear and danger. My campaign really is run on wasted incompetence. That's what my campaign is run on. Just because I can highlight there's a danger coming down the road doesn't mean I'm concentrating on that or running my campaign on that. Mine is about wasted incompetence. If we want to improve this country, that's what we need to tackle. We need to tackle the fact that 20% of our civil servants are still working from home. We need to tackle that billions of our taxpayer money is wasted every single week and we don't know where it goes to. And we're funding stupid projects and stupid people. And we've got people in our civil services who can't be fired, who produce nothing, do nothing. In fact, are a hindrance to improving people's lives. And we can't even sack them. That's what my campaign is really about. Until we fix the foundations of our society, nothing will change, nothing can get improved, and nothing else can be built upon these foundations at the moment.
A question I'd be asking if I was watching my own show is this: is it the case that the older you get, the more you think, oh, nostalgia isn't what it used to be? That it was all better in the past because we don't remember the bad stuff. We don't remember World War One, World War Two, the Korean War, the Vietnam War, the Cold War, the Cuban Missile Crisis, because we like to remember the rosy things rather than the bad things. Did it really used to be better?
That's a fantastic point to raise, and you're absolutely correct. Humans will always look back with rose-tinted spectacles. We have letters written 2,000 years ago from Rome saying their culture is failing because of the new generation. We have letters written in Victorian England saying the generation coming up now have no respect for their elders. So you're right. We always look back and we criticise that things were always better. But let's not look back too far. Let's just look back in, several years in our lifetime now. Just a couple of years ago, the NHS wasn't as bad as it was 2 years ago as it is today. The housing crisis wasn't as bad as it was 2 years ago. 5 years ago, we had a border force. 5 years ago, we didn't have people getting boats and coming over to our country. 5 years ago. 5 years ago, we didn't have a two-tier policing system where one person can hold a sign at the moment in the UK with a Nazi symbol on it, and the answer is from the police there and then watching it. Or that could be a different context, that Nazi swastika. All right, can it? But then you've got, in the same demonstration, someone holding the Union Jack flag, the flag of our country, and can be arrested for provoking hate crime and violence. So we don't have to look back 50, 40 years. We just have to look back 2 or 3 years to see the changes and our country's going through. And my point is, they're not good changes and we need to stop them and we need to get back to basics.
The standard of living in this country goes up and down, I know, but if you look at it across 30 years, then there's no doubt that the average standard of living has improved. So also, it could be argued, whatever's going to happen in the near future, I don't know, but it could be argued that we haven't had a world war for 80 years. And these are big successes, that these are actually triumphs we bank and we don't take advantage of in our minds because we just look at the problems.
And that's human nature. So humans are more inclined to be looking for negativity and looking for dangers because that's how we survive. That's how we survived the saber-toothed tiger, was always watching out for danger. So if you're walking through a forest and you hear a branch break, you can either think that's danger, it's wolves, or you can think, oh, it's nothing. But if you're wrong and it was wolves, you die. But if you're right and you climb a tree and it turns out it was nothing, you've lost nothing. So we're programmed to look out for danger. And because we don't have much to worry about now, saber-toothed tigers, violent gangs on the streets, being invaded, starving to death, because we don't worry about that, we now have to worry about very small problems. And that is so that's part of the problem is we're designed to worry, but we've got nothing really to worry about.
Well, it was Harold Wilson, who was a Labour Prime Minister, who said you've never the white heat of technology would make things happen and make it all better. And I think one of the other phrases which sticks in my mind from a former politician in Britain, you've never had it so good. Well,
Mm.
it's sort of true though, isn't it, Nick? Because we have a high standard of living, people have debt, but they're safe, they're not starving, they have interesting things to do. Internet is close to ubiquitous now. Maybe we are the dogs in a manger. Maybe you and I sitting here moaning about what's wrong with politics and their country and society, that we're the curmudgeons. And instead of taking that attitude, we simply say, let's count our blessings. We live in one of the richest countries in the world with opportunities. In a world where I can sit here in Dallas, 10,000 kilometers from you or 9,000 kilometers from you, and we still have a dialogue, which can be watched by the world.
Absolutely. So you're right in that. So we are better off and got a better standard of living than ever before. Um, but that's not a benefit for the people who are living now. As in, we don't judge our happiness based on 2 decades, 100 years ago. We base our happiness on what's happening in our lives today. So every generation has many positives, but some negatives. And some of those negatives will be new negatives. So let's look at the life of a young person in our country today. So the internet's amazing. What we're doing now is amazing, but that also comes with a downside. So a 15-year-old 10 years ago may have been bullied at school, but that was only 6 hours a day. That 15-year-old now can be bullied 24 hours a day now online. So when they're sat in their bedroom, they're still being bullied. So that's a downside to that. And we only have to look at, suicide rates. Let's look at girls self-harming. Let's look at the lunacy of the trans movement, people abusing themselves and cutting parts of their bodies off and committing suicide. So even though in some ways our lives are better, in other ways they've got worse because of the breakdown of the family, because of a loss of religion, because of lack of community. So telling people who are suffering today that they need to chin up and suck it in because you've got a better life than your grandparents had is no consolation to them when they're suffering new issues today. So we need to look at both sides. We need to say to them, you've got amazing opportunities now. It's easier to be a millionaire today than it was 10 years ago because of the internet, because of technology. We travel more. You've got the world's information. You've got the information and knowledge of everybody who's ever existed on the planet in the phone in your pocket. If that can't make you break your chains of poverty, nothing will. So there's lots of benefits, but people still need help and support.
Thank you, Nick. Really interesting to talk with you. And the boomerangs indeed are behind you. Let's hope that the messages you throw out there bring back votes for you. That's Nick Buckley. MBE could be the next mayor of Manchester. It's a possibility. You've got to be in it to win it. Well,
if you like that video, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, hit that notification bell and comment. And if you like what I'm saying about running for Mayor of Greater Manchester, then stick around. Tell your family, tell your friends. The only way I'm going to have a chance of winning is a grassroots movement. So be part of that movement and hit that bell. Thanks.